Meeting will come to order. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk will please call the roll.
Chairperson Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Young.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Heft. Here. Mayor Morrow.
Here.
Councilmember Gearbaugh. Here. Staff Rep Cole. Here. Commissioner Beardsley.
Here.
Commissioner Fosdick.
Here.
And Commissioner Troika.
Here.
And Director Harrington is here also. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 27th as submitted?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's passed. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comments. Persons requested but not required to state their name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and this citizen comment period will be limited to a total of 45 minutes. We have unfinished business regarding the application of Martin Stoneman of Compassionate Advisors, LLC, for a special land use in the C3 district from Appendix A, Article 4, Section 4.04, parentheses 13, for a medical marijuana provisioning center, and a preliminary site plan remodeling the existing 1,760 square feet suite within the structures to create a retail space at 813 West Michigan. Parcel 1818-01-325-016. Mr. Harrington.
Yes, I talked with the applicant earlier last week. They were unable to conduct the traffic and parking study per the request of the Planning Commission at the July meeting. They expect to be able to have conducted that by this time this week. I haven't spoken with them that they've officially completed the study, but I do believe so that they have. And they mentioned that August 24th, which is the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting, would be more than enough time to have that completed, as well as have our consulting, Mike Auerbach, look over the results of that. Please excuse the typo and the lack of apostrophe in the memo I submitted.
Is there a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the memo?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, noting the comments of our Community Development Director, Mr. Green, I'd move to postpone action until our next regular meeting of August 24th, 2022.
That be Mr. Harris?
Harrington.
What did I say?
Green.
God. A verbal tick.
Only
Don't take
meant
it as
3 months.
don't take it as disrespect, Mr. Harrington. Excuse me.
With that correction, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Are there any other items?
I have one at the risk of maybe destroying what would otherwise be the fastest Planning Commission meeting in the history of Saline. Was reminded by a resident of something we looked at a number of years ago, and that is, how can we do a better job of ensuring that some of the projects that we approve don't get stalled out because of, lack of financial wherewithal or whatever. And the concept of getting a performance bond was raised some years ago, and I think we were advised by council that that would be difficult to do because, essentially the city's not the beneficiary or the owner of the project. But it just strikes me that, now with 3-4 projects that lay uncompleted, that's a work item that we might want to consider putting some time into, and whether it's performance bond or some sort of criteria to evaluate financial wherewithal or viability or something. It's a slippery slope, but just wondered if that would be something the Planning Commission might want to take up.
Is that a planning commission, or would that be a city council?
Yeah, good question. And
Probably, if I may, Mr. Chairman, probably more of the latter, though I think City Council would probably be interested in insights not only from this body, but also from a code review, which helps us draft ordinances and policies prior to their adoption. But we have talked about performance bonding, surety bonding, lines of credit in the past, and probably with Mr. Harrington's arrival with the organization, that ought to be evaluated again.
Right, I think that's definitely a point of discussion. I'm usually hesitant to put city dollars on the line when it comes to private projects for a variety of reasons. I think that we're doing a better job of due diligence with potential applicants, walking them through the site plan process, making sure they're not, as long as they're actively willing to engage with the city, we're happy to share what information we have with them about various requirements that they may or may not be aware of, not only at the city level, but state building code, if there's ADA compliance that they have to meet, et cetera. We're making a real effort to have pre-application meetings with any potential developer interested in coming to the city. And it is our hope that, these half-built projects will stay in the past and not carry forward with us into this new era post-COVID. And as you've all probably read the MLive article, there's prospective buyer for the hotel. I can tell you that there is an application and a pending purchase agreement of 121 Sage Court, which is the car wash was erected in 2004. Yes.
And if I may, Mr. Harrington, for the Planning Commission's edification, we have not closed yet. I expect to be closing in the next 2 weeks, but City Council did repurchase 207 Monroe Street from Mr. Farrell as well. That was approved unanimously at our last council meeting. Most of the documents have now been signed by my office, and I'm just waiting to schedule the closing. So I expect the city will take deed of that property before the end of August. And just to be very clear, our goal is to move expeditiously and find a qualified, competent developer who we can sell the property to, who can expedite a quality project on that site. So if you know of anybody, please direct them to the city manager's office, because she's taking the lead on that particular project or initiative.
Back to the general point, we're being far more proactive than I think staff has been in the past in making sure that we're having qualified developers, enter these sites, and we're not tolerating the cutting of corners, whether that be with the state building code or with our ordinances here. So we're being pretty stringent about that, and I think usually, having a zero tolerance policy for an unsafe building or a half-built structure is an effective strategy in making sure you weed out people who would otherwise have nefarious interests or not be able to complete the project for one reason or another.
If I could, I think one of the things is that question always comes up, and Mr. Beardsley's correct that we always talk about it, but we never give the information to say why and why we are not doing that. So we may want to develop at least some short study or whatever, or understanding of why we would use it and why we wouldn't use it, and then provide that information. Because usually it's generally been, at what dollar amount do you set the price? Because we talked about it with, I can't remember which one of the projects, that do you set it at $5 million, or do you, like the hotel, do you set it at $20 million, and there's no way they would ever do the development because the cost of the performance bond would be, 10% of the development. So you're looking at another $2 million in order to assure that project would be completed, so that would basically kill the project. But I think one of the things that we do need to understand is we already do use some of those types of tools, especially when we allow occupancy and without a CFO and some of that stuff. But it would be helpful to understand when we would do that. And I agree, we've taken the step to make sure that roads and things are finished at the beginning, not at the end, so that if it does go into default, whatever, at least you have some of the infrastructure in place and everything so that someone can take it over and hopefully finish it.
To continue further, we had a meeting, City Manager O'Toole, City Engineer Humphris, and myself today, as well as Clerk Ritchie, to go over the various requirements that we should be establishing as a body and per our recommendations for specific conditions that need to be attached to final site plans to ensure that newer subdivision developments and things like that provide roads back to the city in a timely manner that do meet our standards. So it is definitely at the forefront of staff's mind and something that we're actively working towards in that respect.
And Mr. Harrington's referring to Maple Oaks, who has yet to give us their roads because they take forever to get something done.
There are a few of them, actually. It goes beyond Maple Oaks.
But actually, that reflects a pretty positive change in policymaking at the city level, at least in the last 10 years. Because as Mr. Gearbaugh would recall, years ago, we would often accept roads at the beginning of the project, which you don't do that. You don't accept a street until the developer has completed his or her project.
And the rationale was that we would get our Act 51 monies, but when you look at certain roads, it wasn't worth the value if you took on a road that was not up to standard, so, and then you were backtracking, but I think the last one we took on was Vanessa Court, if I remember right, so. But thanks, Mr. Beardsley, because I think that is a question that always gets asked, it always comes up in every single campaign question, every issue that comes up when we talk about strategic planning, so we really just need to finally seal it and be done with it.
And maybe understand what other communities have done to protect themselves. I also have one more thing, and that is, sometime back, we talked about doing an audit of site plans, and we were going to hire a third party, I think, and I don't think we've talked about it in the whatever number of months it's been.
That's still in the hopper. I think that's on your kind of to-do list, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
But there's a lot of things on your to-do list as a new employee.
Yes, that definitely is on our to-do list, and something that we frequently are looking at as we're trying to figure out why discrepancies exist in old developments. For example, found a development from the 70s that was a condo development. Some of them have decks on the front, some of them don't. It was there, we're given permission per zoning code. There's no way they could have a deck. I mean, like, we have these kind of lingering issues that, staff isn't really sure exist and predate previous staff members that are still around even. So a development from the 70s, I need to see a site plan to effectively tell me one thing or another. But yes, that is an issue we run into on a regular basis and one that we're still investigating, but we will likely have to hire a third-party consultant, whether that be our planning, CWA, or code enforcement services to adequately evaluate those site plans.
I did talk to the city manager about that. It was included in my mid-year state of the city address, and I think our goal is to launch something before the end of this calendar year.
And I think that's very doable.
What reminded me of that is there's still no sidewalk on the east side of Maple, there at Maple Oaks, Maple Cove, and that's potentially dangerous for anyone trying to, on the east side, and, either needing to cross where there is no cross, or not needing, but probably crossing where there isn't a crosswalk, or going down the street.
That is part of our project.
Yeah, that's actually for next year. There will be a sidewalk
Okay.
installed on Maple in front of, on North Maple in front of Maple
I
Cove.
think we talked about that in terms of aligning it with the road
Correct.
improvement. and that's-
Correct.
Yep.
The only place where we won't have a sidewalk is in front of basically Maplewood subdivision where it crosses, right where Lair Farms is, and it comes across before Lee Hare's Ride, and you have to come start walking on the west side. There isn't plans yet for a sidewalk on the east side of Maple there.
But that's an excellent point, Mayor Pro Tem Gerbeau, which is that's something we ought to push Liebherr Aerospace Automotive to complete the next time they do an expansion on their site that they acquired from the Layer family in 2008.
But if you do see things like that, I've been sending them to Ben, to they basically say, here's the situation, because even the one place where I saw sidewalks is Brecken Village, and they deferred their sidewalks 20 years ago, so it should be somewhere in the site plan that they need to put those in at this time.
I think all that information helps too. Obviously, I've not been with the city for that long, so if any of you personally saw these cases as they came before you and recall some, abnormality about the site plan that wasn't acted out in reality, that information helps us better enforce what was agreed to with the city, especially if it was a specific condition.
If there's no more discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move to adjourn at 7:14.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.